future prospects.
I was told to speak only 15 minutes. I will try to stick to that time, but I would like to talk to you a little bit more about some other aspects, but not only about the hurricane. Talking to the Chinese ambassador in Dublin, we were talking about hurricanes, damages and everything, and he told me, you know, if you see the plans for social and economic developments in Cuba in long perspective, you will realize that this is just 1 second or one step back, which is not important in the history. But this is the Chinese mentality. They have a lot of patience and they see the life with more calm. We are very Latino, and in our terms, an emotional thing or a destruction caused by a hurricane could be a very important and decisive turning point in this very moment. But okay, I wanted to tell you that many people in the state, many politicians in America, the Bush administration itself, were planning the final defeating of the Cuban Revolution exactly at the moment when Fidel Castro will get sick, will die, or will retire. So they were doing plans, they were doing long thinking tanks, were very concentrated in elaborating policies that includes even immigration decisions for the moment when Fidel Castro will step aside of the top leadership of the government. That already happened, and those plans were sent immediately to the garbage baskets because they believed their own lies. And that proved that what we have been talking for a long time, Cuban Revolution is a social process which is led by Fidel Castro, was led for a long time, still led by Fidel Castro, and for the historical revolution includes the Cuban population. And it's a process that is being developing and adapting to the moment when the revolution is taking place. So that's why the Americans were not able to defeat Cuba till the present time. They think it is a fixed idea that it doesn't move and they can plan the way of its destruction. So we survived, I can say that. We survived Bush administration. I don't think in a month's time he has time enough to destroy Cuba. So he's gone. The wildest American president has lost all its capital, political capital, if he ever had, in a 4 years' time. The more super powerful and neoliberal superpower in the world is implementing nationalization programs in its bank. Some people are calling him Comrade Butch. They have to drink a very bitter medicine, which is not solving the problem, in our opinion. The problem is much bigger than that, and Cuban revolution has a lot of realistic perspective of developing itself in the coming future. So talking about realistic perspective, I would like to share with you some information that I got in Cuba during the ambassador's meeting. We have a meeting where all the ambassador gathers in Havana. We are given a lot of secret information that we have not to give to my public. I will not tell you those information, I will just give you the public one information. The Cuban government, with the assistance of Fidel Castro as the biggest advisor, I would say he's the advisor of the government, and following his ideas, is very concentrating itself at this very moment to trying to build up full food and energy safety for the country. We think the biggest challenge for any country in this world in the coming time, in this coming months and years, will be the food safety and energy safety. We think the madness of consuming energy at any cost, of transforming food into fuel, the growing population, and some other, the disasters, the natural disasters that we were victims for, but the whole world is being affected, will make the food supply in a very difficult situation, not only for developing countries, but for the rest of the world. So every country may build a plan on safety, on have the safety of guarantee for its own population the necessary food and the necessary energy. So we went to Cienfuegos, the central province in Cuba. We visited State Enterprise We used to be very inefficient enterprise because of the organization problems, because of the financial and bureaucratic problems. And we saw a very renewed enterprise where they are for the first time exporting vegetables to Canada. I have to tell you honestly that we were buying vegetables from neighboring countries in the middle of the summer. There was the idea that we were not able to produce vegetables. Thanks to the Chinese training, we were able to discover that you can build a greenhouse to have the contrary effect of a greenhouse in Ireland. I mean, to keep plants fresh and out of the sun. So we are producing vegetables. We stopped buying, for the first time in many years, beef from abroad, pork meat, vegetables and fruits. We are not buying it. We were not buying anymore those products, and this process is just starting. We are buying almost a half of the powdered milk that we used to buy in the past by taking very simple, decentralizing decisions and eliminating a lot of bureaucracy. I'm not saying we are going to a private way of production. I'm saying we are perfectioning the state way of production, and we are also including some improvements on a private way of production of food. This is the situation that we have to solve at this very moment. Maybe in 5 years' times we will take different decisions. This is the spirit of the Cuban Revolution, to take decisions according to the moment where you are living. We are increasing the production of renewable energies, saving energy. We think the best way of getting energy, the energy safety, is to save energy. We are consuming at this moment 8 million tons of oil. We were consuming 13 million tons in 1989, before the collapse of the Soviet Union. We are consuming now 8 million, and we consider it's too high. So we are trying to decrease. We are taking very simple measures that you already know. We substitute our lamps by saver lamps. We substitute we were watering the crops using petrol engines and diesel engines. Now we are using electrical engines, simply because to carry the petrol from the cities or the refineries to the farms, we were consuming already energy, and you can carry the energy much cheaper. Every Cuban is cooking at the moment with electrical devices for the same purpose. So that's why we are reducing our consumption, but we are also exploring offshore and inland for oil resources. And just 3 days ago, Fidel, that used to be very carefully about this information, but now he feels more free being officially not in power, he was saying Cuba will be a crude exporter very soon. So that means there were comments, I don't have any concrete information, but they discovered an important oil sources in the country that will permit Cuba to be more efficient. Because of ALBA, we visited as well the petrochemical plants that are being built in Cienfuegos. An old Russian refinery was rebuilt totally, is refining oil at the moment and distributing petrol to the countries of the Caribbean area through a program that we call Petro Caribe. So all the Caribbean countries are receiving cheaper petrol refined in Cuba from Venezuelan oil. But together with that factory, we built a factory of houses, petro houses. It's difficult to understand, but those are beautiful houses built with byproducts of oil. It's a plastic house that isolates the heat in the tropical weather. That is fantastic. Beautiful house that can resist the strongest hurricane. And they did with these hurricanes. We are building 3 more factories like this. We are planning to build fertilizer factory, plastic PVC factories all over the region of Cienfuegos and Santiago de Cuba. There are also new food processing factories being built in Havana province, Matanzas, and in many other places of my country. So in our holidays, I could see myself the improvement of the public transportation. We eliminate, if somebody has visited Havana before, we had the so-called camels, big trucks carrying a strange device behind, full of people. This is gone. We have normal buses. articulated buses produced in China and Russia mainly, and they are going very efficiently every 5 minutes. I see people waiting for the buses and leaving them go because they were expecting a more comfortable space in the next one. I didn't see that for the last 15 years. We were jumping on any truck or any disastrous car that will be able to stop in a bus stop. That is a big improvement. I know this sounds very normal for Europe, but for Cuba, after emerging from a very long crisis, it gave a hold to the population that the living standards, the daily living standards, are going to be improved. That's true that we have a very good medical system, very good educational system, but we do have to improve the daily life of the Cubans in general, including public transportation, energy supply, food supply, and many, many others, as the cultural life should be enriched, more facilities, and it's going like that. So, okay, I will try to fix to the time, and I want to talk a little bit about the impact of these hurricanes. We are used to have hurricanes. We have very, very good plans of preparation and confronting hurricanes. Normally we evacuate people when we see the threat of a hurricane, and we avoid the losses of human life. But this time we had two very serious storms. The first one, Gustav, with a strength that bring this hurricane to the fourth category. We have 5 categories. The 5th is the strongest, like a hurricane Mitch in Central America. Some years ago, this was 4th category. In some places of Pinar del Rio, the speed of the wind was 345 kilometers per hour. There is impossible for a timber house to resist such a speed of winds. In the island of Youth, for you to have an idea, the whole north part of the island was deforested. No one tree remained standing. Few coconut palms, because they are the strongest who could resist hurricanes. In provinces like Las Tunas, I'm talking about the next hurricane, the Ike, they had already the 22% of the land covered by forest. 20 years ago, Las Tunas was the most deforested province in Cuba, and they were facing a problem of desertification. So we started a plan of reforestation, and from 5% we went to 22% of wood areas. Now it is only 8%. So the whole efforts done by a period of 20 years was destroyed in a few hours. So socially speaking, Gustav, we didn't have any casualty because of Gustav. We had 7 because of Ike, mainly accidents. But if you compare both of the hurricanes, 11 provinces of the country, of the 14 provinces we have, were seriously damaged. The 95% of the electrical grid was destroyed. The 500,000 of houses were very seriously damaged, and 67,000 of them were destroyed totally. 70% of the agriculture, especially crops, were destroyed as well, and many social facilities as school, hospitals, warehouses, factories, sugar mills were destroyed. For the first time, we had to stop the nickel production because the factories were very, very damaged. So at the beginning, the government took the decision to send its main cadres to the provinces to organize the country as if we were confronting an aggression of the USA. We make work the plans that we have for US aggressions. So every province became a small state that doesn't wait doesn't wait for decisions taken in Havana. They were taking their own decisions at every province. That includes plans to save the population from hurricanes and recovery plan. Because we lost most of our communications, no electricity, that was not possible to communicate with the population through TV, and because of the particular situation of the roads were practically blocked. But I have to tell you, in 5 days, all the roads were recovered and the transport was flowing again normally. At this very moment, the 90 2% of the electricity supply has been recovered. In some places we are using the generators that we have for the peak time or for wartime. So we're using those generators there where the national grid was not rebuilt yet and people have already electricity. We use the war reserve and the state reserve. We have a large war reserve distributed all over the country in caves and shelters and underground. We keep their food for a certain period of time. I know the number of months, but I will not tell you. And this food is being replaced every 2 months to keep it fresh in case of war. So all this food went out of this, and it's being getting out and distributed to the population. The state decided to put a limit to the prices of the so-called peasant market or free market to avoid the speculation, and taking very serious measures against those who have been trying to speculate. We have stopped some developing programs, and we are diverting all this money to the import of food and construction materials especially. Trade unions have designated its best workers, construction workers, to give lessons to the neighbors at every small town, at every municipality, on how to rebuild or build a house. And people are rebuilding and building their houses with their own efforts, so they are not working for specialists to come to build their houses, but they are getting few lessons and some advice, and they are building their houses using the local materials, while the state is providing them with the more proper materials. So in this way, I will say the economy will be recovered in its general figures, but in a period of 2-3 months. The agriculture will be recovered, and the food supply in 6 months, and the housing will take longer time. I want to explain you the situation of international aid and the so-called American proposal of aid. Immediately after the hurricane, we got the solidarity of friendly countries, especially neighboring countries in Latin America: Venezuela, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Spain, Belgium, Russia, even Pakistan, countries of Asia. East Timor donate $1 million immediately after the hurricanes. So we have got a very important and very significant, in terms of political value, aid from countries and organizations all over the world. Here in Ireland, the trade unions are collecting funds to be donated to Cuba. Some of them, they have really impressive plans to collect. I don't know if they're going to be able to do so, but for example, SIPTO want to collect €250,000 to send it to Cuba. And all this aid have been welcomed. It is encouraging the Cuban people to recover our economy because of the value of this solidarity. When people heard about East Timor donating $1 million, they were emotionally reacting, because East Timor is one of the most poor countries in Asia region. So in this framework, the US proposed an aid of $100,000, but they put conditions, what they normally do. They put conditions to all of us, including countries of Europe, but we don't accept conditions. And they thought we are going to react as many countries accepting aid because of the situation. So they proposed the aid, but only accepting 50 US specialists. That is a big joke. They didn't have one of those specialists looking for New Orleans 3 years ago. So how can they send 50 specialists to look at the conditions of Cuba? We think, and we know, they wanted to send 50 CIA agents to work in Cuba freely. We are not afraid of those agents. We have thousands of Cuban agents to be attached to them. But we don't want to accept conditions. It's a political decision. So then they also say they will distribute this aid, but using NGOs. I don't know what they mean, because they don't recognize any Cuban organization, even though a Cuban church as an NGO. So they will invent NGOs to distribute the aid in Cuba trying to show that Cuba government is a corrupt government that will steal the value of $100,000 from the US. So we say no, and we say them it's ridiculous. Your debt with Cuba is $93 billion. This is the cost of the US blockade against Cuba, so we cannot accept these misery conditions. So then they increased to 5 million, and I think Fidel stopped them by saying, don't propose us $1 billion because we are not going to accept your money and your aid. So the Cuban government told them, if you want to help, eliminate the blockade for 6 months' time. Let Cuba buy in the US food and construction material, because simple, it's cheaper there, but let Cuba do so as normally every country trade in this world, by having access to credits and facilities to buy. They never answered the question. So this situation has been used by the Americans to present Cuban government as a government that doesn't care about the situation of its people because of ideological reasons. And of course, we are not the owners of the media, so they can pass the message, but we are not able to pass our message. So I had to confront here a person telling me that you are not getting support from Europe because you are refusing support from Europe. And I have to tell that person, no, you are reading American papers. The situation with Europe is different. We don't have a cooperation agreement with Europe because Europe sanctioned Cuba in 2003 following the mandate of the US. And while Europe will not recall this decision of not having any trade or any cooperation with Cuba, it would be very difficult to implement such a cooperation. But we are getting support from Europe, from Europeans, and we think it's more valuable to receive a small support from a trade union or a party or a social group than to receive millions conditioned aid. So that's the situation. We feel we had a devastation of our country. I have to recognize honestly, but this devastation didn't bring us to desperation or no hope of recovery. We are using the philosophy that Fidel Castro always implemented in our history. We have to transform defeats into victories. We have to transform losses into gains. So we think we are learning from these hurricanes, and we have to be more prepared, even though we are very proud of our system of confronting natural disasters. But we have to be more prepared in terms of building a more safer electrical grid. We will have to change the type of electrical grid we have. We have to build more safer houses, stronger houses, to be more able to resist. Maybe we have to improve our system of reserve for casualties, and we are taking those lessons, and we see the recovery happening now. So we are very optimistic about the future. It will retard perhaps some very important developing programs, but it will not stop it. We will continue. The foreign trade minister in the conference, he said we even are paying back our debts regularly, so we are not in a status of an emergency as they did in Galveston immediately after the hurricanes. We didn't have the need to call for a status of an emergency because people were disciplined, normally reacting and recovering. We didn't have the vandalism like they had in Galveston, with all those millions of dollars, the FEMA sending thousands of buses and then having 30 people dead. So what is failing is not the FEMA, it's the whole system. And we are very proud of having a system which functions in this kind of situation. So we are very optimistic about the future. I invite you to go to Cuba in 6 months' time, and you will see the same country you saw when you were there before the hurricanes. Thank you very much.